Greetings, brothers and sisters. A quick introduction. In this video, I'll break down in the code who these two horns are that give power onto the beast. You see, the beast is a conglomerate, which is made up of many parts such as political, military, social, economic, and a lamb-like power that dominates the earth. The beast will arise out of human civilization itself. Now you may ask why they are called beasts. Well, the power behind these kingdoms is the beast himself, Satan. Where did Satan get the term beast? Well, in Genesis, from the beginning, chapter 3, verse 14, Jehovah Elohim said to the serpent, "Because you have done this, cursed are you above all the livestock and above all the beasts of the field. On your belly you shall go, and thus shall you eat all the days of your life." Now, keep into consideration that the beast was cursed, meaning anyone who follows or listens to the beast is cursed also, and gets the curse and the judgments of the law. Now also, a beast is an animal without reason or understanding, and cannot be reasoned with. Now we also see that these two horns would be instrumental in resurrecting the image of the first beast, and you will discover that this is the papacy power itself. Let's begin to decipher and decode this second beast spoken of in Revelation 13. In verse 11 it says, "Then I saw another beast rising out of the earth." Now this is speaking about from among the people, nations, tribes, and tongues. So from among those people at the time of that first beast. Now we're told that it has two horns like a lamb, meaning it has attributes which is similar and resembles Yeshua's kingdom, his people. Now these two horns are speaking about two leading powers that would arise on the world stage after that first beast. Keep this in mind. There are several clues to identifying them. Now the first clue we are given is that they were like a lamb, meaning they were founded on those same principles of this first beast, the papacy. Now this is speaking of Roman Catholicism, which is really based on Babylonian idolatry, and they worship this so-called Queen of Heaven. Now think about that for a moment. Rome worshipped this queen, who they call Mary, who really is rooted in Babylonian etymology. But we are told it spoke like a dragon. The meaning here is that they are deceivers and speak lies and deceptions. Now, of course, I'm speaking about the leading power behind those nations, and we know who this is speaking of, and it's the serpent. Now, about who these two leading nations are, let's consider for a moment. We are told that the eighth head is the beast itself, and this goes all the way back into Daniel, into Nebuchadnezzar's dream of his kingdom, this head of gold which represents Babylon. Now also this head symbolizes the lion with eagle wings. Now this is important. Now what two powers came up from the times of this first beast, which is speaking of the papacy, that meet all of the criteria? Now there are only two powers that precisely fulfill this. And the clue to deciphering these two powers is within the symbol of Babylon itself. Now, also the order and timing they arise to power on the scene is important. And the two powers I'm speaking of is Britannia, or the Roman name for Britain, which is now the United Kingdom, which is symbolized by a lion. And of course, America itself, the eagle. Now we are told in Daniel chapter 7 verse 4, "The first was like a lion, and it had the wings of an eagle. I watched until its wings were torn off, and it was lifted from the ground so that it stood on 2 feet like a human being, and the mind of a human was given to it." Now of course this prophecy was about Babylon itself, because they were the symbols of Babylon, but we see it has a dual fulfillment. You see, this mystery, we are told, is the mystery about Babylon itself. In Revelations 17, she is referred to as Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes and the abominations of the earth. And we're also told that this 8th head is the beast itself. And this goes right back to Babylon and to this head, the statue of gold, which represents the ruler. And also we see in the order in which this second beast arises out of the earth, and these 2 horns prophetically symbolize Britain, who came first, the line, then split up into 2, forming America the Eagle. Now, let's consider carefully. In Ecclesiastes, chapter 1, verse 9, we are told, what has been will be again, what has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun. You see, I've understood this concept early in my life that history repeats itself. I'm going to see these patterns, shadows, and thoughts within the word of truth. Now, when Yeshua said in Matthew chapter 24, verse 37, "But as the days of Noah were, so shall the coming of the Son of Man." So, in other words, he is telling us that a similar events would precede his return, like those dates. Now we read in Genesis chapter 6, verse 11. We're told the earth was corrupt before Elohim, and the earth was filled with violence. So Elohim looked upon the earth, and indeed it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way on the earth. And Elohim said to Noah, "The end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them, and behold, I will destroy them with the earth." Now, isn't it interesting? The earth was full of violence. We see this in our time with civil unrest, anger building, and uprisings and protests, police brutality, no consideration for the elderly or the young, man, woman, or child. Also, this is speaking about the sons of Elohim, or the Watchers, who interbred and corrupted the DNA or the seed of humans. And this even extended to the DNA of animals. That was the primary reason the Creator had to destroy all life except for those clean animals, meaning not altered from the original state. Now Noah, a righteous man, who was not corrupted or defiled by his surroundings, was saved. Now we see in like manner that there is a corruption in the land again in our time, and it has to do with the minds and the altering of the DNA of mankind through this mRNA gene editing. And also we see that another major sign, as it was in the days of Noah, was this flooding all around the world, and we see that in our times also. And here's another example. Just consider Egypt. We see that the Israelites were enslaved due to lies and deceptions. And when they were being oppressed, they cried out to the Most High to save them. Because you see, mankind was enslaved by the serpent. But they forgot the Torah and they listened to the serpent instead, which they were warned not to. We see in like manner, mankind again will once be enslaved and be branded like animals through the mark of the beast. That is why there will be another exodus in these days, and those who keep the commandments will be saved and allowed to enter paradise. Now let's continue with this. Now we see that both these nations are connected, both England and America, and they have very close relationships. And now this prophecy even stipulates this in the prophecy itself. Now we're going to go into more detail on these two nations, because we're told that these nations exercise the power of the first beast. And why these two nations? Well, we'll consider that in a moment. Now these symbols of a lion and an eagle are very profound. Consider that England, or Britannia, a lion is a symbol of a territorial animal. And what a befitting symbol for England when you consider that from the 1700s to the 1800s, Britain was involved in at least 137 wars or rebellions. Britain began with its overseas possessions and trading posts established by England between the late 16th and 18th centuries. And by the 1900s, the British Empire held, as it was described, the empire on which the sun never sets. You see, the sun was always shining on at least one of its territories because it commanded pretty much most of the world. And the 18th century saw the newly united Great Britain rise to the world's dominant colonial power. Then we had the 7 Years' War therefore left Britain as the world's most powerful maritime power. So you see, the lion came first, and this is what the prophecy stipulated. Now about the United States. After the American Revolutionary Wars of the 1700s, 1775 to 1783, we see America taking its independence in the year 1776. So America rose to power after the lion, as the prophecy stipulates. And take for example its symbol, the eagle, a sign of strength, sovereignty, and supremacy. Now who can argue of America's role in these times? It is the police force of the earth, the hammer of the earth. And take for example, it is the headquarters for the UN, the international territory in New York City. Now the UN was established after World War II with the aims of preventing future wars, succeeding the ineffective League of Nations. And over 50 governments met in San Francisco for a conference that started drafting the UN Charter. And this was adopted in 1945. Now it is the center of global governance. And just remember that the foundation of the UN was based on Lucifer Trust, power over all nations, kindreds, and people. Now, we are told that they spoke like a dragon. Now let's consider for a moment, both these nations were founded upon secret societies. The Masonic order, which is really the seat of Satan, and the one who has given power unto the beast. Now isn't that truly amazing? Now let's talk about America as Mystery Babylon, and these two nations who played this key role in Israel. Now we're told that the woman, symbolizing Israel, rides the beast. Now was it not the Balfour Declaration issued by the British government in 1917 during the First World War, announcing the support for the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people? Now this British mandate created the conditions for this Jewish minority to gain superiority in Palestine. Now we understand that many times in the past, ancient Israel was expelled from the land and they were scattered amongst the nations. And this is all because they broke the covenant and the curses of the law came upon them. And after they rejected the Messiah, Yeshua, he foretold them that they would be scattered amongst the nations. Now, the prophecy clearly stipulated that at the end of time, they would be brought back again into their homeland. Now, this is to fulfill the words of prophecy written within the word of truth. Now also, let's consider America and its long-term support for Israel. Nobody can deny this. Now also, America in December 2017 officially recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital. Now this occurred exactly 70 years after the UN General Assembly voted on Resolution 181. Now this number 70 is very prophetic in Israel's history. You see, the Creator has power and dominion over all things. Now many years ago, just after 9/11, I understood that something significant had occurred, and I remember seeking understanding on this in the Spirit, and it was revealed unto me that the book of Revelations was starting to be fulfilled. I remember getting this understanding about America and coming to this knowledge that she was Mystery Babylon. Now, although then I did not fully understand this mystery, but I do recall these verses about Babylon, the city that rules over the nations of the earth. This is New York City, and it's also the headquarters of the United Nations, and also the merchants of the world. Now, she is also called the hammer of the earth, with her constant warmongering and meddling in international affairs. And we see that Babylon in ancient times had a symbol erected, an image of the beast. Likewise, we see in America the Statue of Liberty, with her 7 diadems upon her head, symbolizing the 7 oceans, 7 continents, and 7 seas. And also let's consider that this is the image of the beast. Just like in ancient Babylon, they erected a golden image, an idol, which was an abomination. Likewise, we see America has a Babylonian symbol in the land. Now also consider that it was Babylon who destroyed Zion, the first temple. And once again, it is Babylon who has destroyed the minds of the people. Because it was through Babylonian idolatry that destroyed Israel in the past, and we see history repeats itself again. Now prophecy states that this great whore will be hated before she is destroyed. And we see that the spirit behind Babylon is seductive and actively engaged in the deception and the destruction of Elohim's people. That she rides upon the beast means she is propped up by the spiritual forces of darkness. In the next video, I'll break down how they spoke like a dragon and the deeper meaning behind this. Thank you for watching.